I think we are ready to start. Okay, thank you everyone for joining our session. My name is Peter Hradisky, and I would like to start this session with acknowledgement. On behalf of the members of the Mount St. Vincent University Business and Tourism Department, thank you for your welcome to this annual gathering. As a new Canadian of Slovak heritage, I acknowledge and pay respect to the Indigenous people of the land from which we host today's meeting, the Elnu and Mi'kmaq people. I live, study, and work on the ancestral, unceded, and unsurrendered territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I also pay respect to the knowledge embedded in the Indigenous custodian of this land and to the elders, past, present, and future. I would like to welcome everyone to our second session of the day for our 47th Annual Learners and Leaders Conference hosted by the MSVU Department of Business and Tourism, our CEO keynote address, where Jennifer Angel, the President and CEO of Develop Nova Scotia, will tell us more about what she does. Jen is a builder of community, momentum, and places people love. Her work contributes to Nova Scotia's natural ocean advantage by creating inclusive, sustainable places that attract people and investment, contribute to community resilience, and enhance quality of life for everyone. Jen's collaborative approach engages the community and finds synergy between public and private sector's interests in common purpose decision-making. She has helped shape some of Nova Scotia's best-loved destinations by land and sea. Her portfolio includes real estate, infrastructure, and program development, participatory planning, and design. Jen was recognized as a top 50 CEO in Atlantic Canada in 2021 by Atlantic Business Magazine. She's chair of the board at Discover Halifax, chair of the Strategic Fundraising Cabinet, and board director at United Way Halifax. Member of the YWCA Halifax Women's Leadership Collaborative, and a director of Taste of Nova Scotia and Ignite Atlantic. She's a founding member of the Art of City Building Conference, an annual symposium that brings together placemaking thought leaders from around the globe in Halifax. And as a reminder, I would like to say that this session is recorded. And if any of you have any questions, please email the faculty, Maria Matthews. Her email address is maria.matthews with double T and number 2. So maria.matthews2@msvu.ca. Over to you, Jen. The online stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you to all of you for taking the time to spend with me today. I'm going to share my screen here, attempt to share my screen here. And while I'm doing that, I also want to acknowledge my colleagues who are on the call. There's a few of them, and I'll share that I know at least 3 of them are graduates of Mount St. Vincent. So I know they're happy to be here for a few reasons this morning. So I'm just going to put this in slideshow, and if you could give me a thumbs up to tell me you can see my slide. Perfect. So thanks again, Peter, for that warm introduction. Like you, we always begin our talks by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kmaq, and you did a beautiful job with the land acknowledgement, I think. And I think it's particularly important in the work that we do, which is all about stewarding important public lands. And the team at Develop Nova Scotia, where I work, pay respect to the traditional knowledge keepers and elders past and present and descendants of this land as we do our work. And through our work, which we strive to build as places for everyone, we commit to reflect and to evidence founding cultures through our discussions, our planning and initiatives, and we honor the Mi'kmaq people and seek their guidance as we continue to develop closer relationships in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. So this is a photo. It was taken by a colleague, a former employee, actually, team member of Develop Nova Scotia, Adam Langley, and I share it sometimes in presentations because I love it. It's a photo that speaks to me. It was perhaps unmistakably for some taken from the Halifax waterfront. That's the ferry in the fog. And to me, it's home. This photo evokes a very strong
Yes.
Emotional response.
It is recording.
And I think it's
I'm
important.
recording to this. So what do you?
Sorry, I think there's somebody else talking here. Oh, there we go. And so I think it helps for me to illustrate the point that home is a feeling, not just a place, and that great places are personal and they are emotional, as is this case for me, and they can evoke intense feelings of home. And so today I'm going to talk about sort of three key points, and I'm going to root them all in this idea of place. What is place, why it matters, and where it might be going. And I want to share that the ideas that I'm going to share with you today aren't my ideas. Many of them aren't my ideas. They come from a variety of different people in different places and areas of work and expertise and professions. Some of them are very old thoughts or thinking, and others are very current. And I'm going to try to knit it together in a bit of a cohesive discussion. And I hope it is a discussion, and I hope you will share your questions through this forum so that we can begin a dialogue. But it really is about making a case for place. And I think the work that you are preparing for, or many of you have already been doing, is really a critical piece of what placemaking is all about, both through your professional lives and also as people of our community. You are all placemakers. And I will inject a little bit of my own experience as the current CEO of Develop Nova Scotia, where I've worked for the last 14 years and have had the benefit of learning all sorts of things and continue to learn new things every day. So with that, let's dig in. So first of all, what is place? The way we like to frame it, and others have framed it, we think rightly, is that a place is a space that has meaning for people. And there's a planner called David Engwhite who says, in the same way a house can be made a home, a space can be made a place. It's the people that make it a place, and people create places over time as they interact with it. They imbue it with meaning. And the work is never finished. So the act of placemaking is people engaging with each other and with the physical environment to create a story that is ever unfolding. And I work and my team work under the Department of Economic Development in the province. We're a Crown corporation. We operate at the intersection of public and private sector. So we report to the province. The Minister of Economic Development is our shareholder. We have a private sector board of directors. We steward public lands, and many of our development partners and tenants are private sector. So we're kind of in that intersection between public and private sector in fulfilling our mandate. And from an economic development point of view, quality of life and place are really a critical piece of our value proposition. And our work is really focused on building on that differentiation advantage to attract people here. And so our goal at Develop Nova Scotia is to build places that people love. And the purpose of that is to attract people here. And so whether we're talking about growing population or attracting visitors, which we like to think of as residents who are here for a short time, we're using place as our tool to attract people to Nova Scotia and support our economy. And the purpose of our work and the possibility of place, which is part of what makes it so exciting, is that places offer an important tool for bringing people who are already here together. And so our purpose is to leverage the possibility of place to attract people to come together, diverse people, people who don't know each other, to come together and work together, as I said, to continue to contribute to the place. And we have all sorts of beautiful buildings and public spaces. In fact, we have PowerPoint decks of them that exist around the world. And it's quite surprising how often even the biggest ideas and most expensive buildings often fail to support active public spaces and gathering of people. And we believe that is the challenge of placemaking. Placemaking is not about imposing one idea. It's about pulling people together to co-create something that they can all participate in and engage with, and through their participation build support for and long-term champions and stewards of a place. But there are some things that are fairly universal in what makes a place great. And you probably can't see this as we're not on a big screen, we're on a little screen, but the short version is, and this is from a group called the Project for Public Spaces, things like sociability. So is it friendly? Is it neighborly? Are there social networks? Is it diverse? Access and linkages. So is it accessible and connected? Is it walkable? Is there transit? Is it comfortable and green and clean and safe and attractive? And are there lots of interesting things to do there? And so those sort of 4 dimensions are kind of tried and true dimensions of great places. And in our experience, that's about right. But as I said, the most successful places are the places where people feel welcome and comfortable. And quite often that relates very much to having a hand in creating them, or absolutely requires that they can see themselves in them. And so William White, who is, I think he passed away in the late 90s, but was an urbanist, and I think I quote him a few times in this presentation, but rightly observed, and he was an observer of people, that it's people that attract people, both in the creation of place and in the activation of place. So I want to show you just very quickly, buzz through a few befores and afters, and this is the Halifax waterfront, which some of you would be quite familiar with. The before pictures are taken by a person called Stephen Archibald, Cove 17. They are from sort of the early mid 80s, so not that long ago. And the afters are in the last sort of 5 or so years on the waterfront. So we'll just do a quick buzz through. So some befores and afters. So sort of looking out to Bishop's Landing and George's Island. And the public boardwalk, which you'll see through a lot of, through those photos, is really to the success of the Halifax waterfront. That's been sort of a backbone of public infrastructure. Didn't have a business case likely on its own, but through its creation and all that it affords in terms of being a platform for a small business, a platform for community to gather, for recreation, for events, it's really been fundamental to creating the destination that the Halifax waterfront has become for visitors and also for locals. This is not the Halifax waterfront. This is Peggy's Cove, and some of you might know that we recently became involved in Peggy's Cove. We were involved with others, the community most notably in a major recapitalization of some key infrastructure there, as well as the creation of some new infrastructure there. This was finished just this year. This is the before, mostly the before picture. That was a turn circle for cars. And this isn't a dramatic before and after from this perspective, which is somewhat intentional, with a very light touch intervention in the landscape. Again, through very extensive and robust community consultation, we were able to make an experience that a lot of Nova Scotians treasure and a lot of visitors treasure available to many more people. And here's another vantage on that. So it's big infrastructure like boardwalks, it's events and activations. This is a shot from tall ships. This is from buskers on the Halifax waterfront, back to the Halifax waterfront here. And it's really simple things that contribute to making a place great. So this is a very inexpensive set of table and chairs. I think we bought them off the rack. I'm pretty sure we did. I remember when we first had a conversation with our operations team about unshackling the seating so that people could move it around. And we practically had a mutiny in the office. They were going to end up in the harbor, or people were going to steal them or whatever. And what instead we found was that people sat in the chairs mostly. I'm sure one or two landed in the harbor to be retrieved, but for the most part, people just enjoyed them and enjoyed having the agency to be able to move them where they like. And this is a very brief video of our team putting out these very inexpensive sets of table and chairs. This is Nathan Green Square next to the ferry terminal, and an area that is a lovely little grassy spot, but was, we noticed, quite underutilized. And you can see as soon as we're putting out the table and chairs, people are pretty much immediately being drawn to them and sitting in them. And we've seen this scale across place after place. It's as simple as this. People will sit where there are places to sit. And so I wanted to share that with you. And it's not just tables and chairs. You might also recognize the hammocks on the Halifax waterfront, which the day we I guess announced them or installed them was in the same week as the announcement of a very large investment and development. And I think it's safe to say that the hammocks won the day in terms of positive public reaction, and they continue to really inspire a lot of joy on the boardwalk year after year. This is a shot in November of 2 years ago, I think. So even in 5-degree weather and fog, they're places people want to be. So why does place matter? This is sort of the second thing I wanted to talk with you about. And I think this is something that we have learned along the way. We used to build places, and so my team is engineers and architects and planners, designers, program managers, and property managers and communicators, and marketers, and we're good at building stuff, and we're good at talking about building stuff, and we used to approach our work as that was the work. So we built stuff, and we build places as ends in themselves. Now we think of that work a little bit differently, and we think of the places we build and the projects we deliver not as ends in themselves, but as tools to deliver on some greater purpose. As we've already talked about, an economic objective, which is to attract people. Great places certainly have a magnetic effect and contribute to the magnetism of our province, but also some other bigger existential challenges or opportunities before us, imperatives before us, things like climate change, systemic racism, community resilience in the face of pandemics, to name a few. And we think that place has the capacity, as it has the capacity to bring people together, it also has the capacity to exclude people. And so we think an awful lot about that and the way we build places as being as important as what we build, recognizing their capacity for good and also, they're done badly, their capacity for exclusion. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. So you likely know or have seen some of the really interesting stuff happening in New Zealand. This is a quote from their Prime Minister. And I think it's certainly not uniquely topical in New Zealand. And I think it's emerging in a lot of places around the world. And it is this recognition that, economic growth without addressing some of the very difficult social and environmental issues before us really isn't success. And so a lot of the thinking we're doing is around resetting the goalposts. Like, what are we really working towards? We do work in economic development, and GDP growth is an important measure of economy, but it's not the only measure, and it's probably not even the most important measure. And so we're thinking a lot about shifting the goal from growth for growth's sake or for a few to well-being for everyone. You might know who Zita Cobb is. So Zita Cobb works in the tourism business now after a long career in technology. Zita is the innkeeper on Fogo Island, which is a tiny little place on the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador. And she was actually in Halifax last fall as part of the Art of City Building Conference, and is an extraordinary thinker and an extraordinary influence in the area of place, and I would argue sort of the future of tourism and thinking about the visitor economy. And I love this quote, and I think it again reinforces the things that are special about this place. I've long believed must have value to support lives. And in the past few years, we've seen a real turnaround in our economy, to the extent that it's overheated in many aspects of it, housing among them. But I stayed in Nova Scotia when a lot of my colleagues left. My sisters both left. My brother-in-law left. I'm sure many of you have family members who left. Many of them are now coming back. And lots more want to come here. And many people, even without roots in Nova Scotia, are now turning to this part of the world with enthusiasm. And so I think what Zita has helped to do in Fogo, which is an idea that scales across places, authentic, local places, intensely local, I think is the language she would use, is really recognize that there is value. There is value in uniqueness and that it can be rethought to support people's lives. And she would say, and her inn, Fogo Island Inn, has been recognized in all of the big, travel pubs. But she would say that Fogo Island Inn is the least interesting thing about Fogo Island, that in fact, it's a Trojan horse for a set of ideas, which I think is a really extraordinary way to think about it. And so this is, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time at this, but this is kind of the map, the strategy map for Develop Nova Scotia. And it's based on Kate Rayworth, who's an economist, and others are picking it up as a model. And in short, those three buckets: authentic destinations, thriving communities, and working waterfronts. Those are the areas where we focus our work and projects. But you'll see they're ringed with a ceiling, an ecological ceiling, and a foundation, a social foundation. And what that represents to us as a team and among our partners is a commitment that the projects that we deliver must have a baseline, high standard of inclusive, diverse participation, and they must have a boundary after, that we won't cross related to impact on our environment, and we push it further than that. We challenge, like, all of our work must fit within these boundaries, which are still being defined, but also each project and through each project and each program, we're pushing ourselves to say, how can this project or program work harder to serve these social and environmental goals? How can they be regenerative? And really thinking about regenerative placemaking as this opportunity to reignite people's relationship with socio-ecological systems through these activations. And this is a completely different way of thinking about our work than we would have done before. And all of that, though, still serving the economic development objectives that have been set out for us. So this quote is by sort of one of the, say, mothers of placemaking, urbanist Jane Jacobs. Others interpret it differently than I do. I think the point of it is, that placemaking and creating and participating in place is not something that only experts can do, that only the city staff can do, that only people who work for Develop Nova Scotia can do. The contrary. Cities have the capability of creating something for everybody. And again, in order to attract people, particularly people who have been marginalized before, you need to ensure that people can see themselves in the place and feel welcome and feel that they can belong there. And the best planner or the best urban designer cannot be a proxy for community or every lived experience. And so we think a lot about this. The way we used to do public engagement, we would host open houses, we'd do up some cool posters, and we'd maybe we'd do a presser about it, or we'd promote it on social media, and 5 people or 17 people would show up, and they were mostly white, and they were mostly paid well, and they were mostly well educated, and they mostly didn't like our projects too. But the point was, we would check the box that we did the engagement that was appropriate to do, that every public project should include, and then we would build the project anyway. And we knew that there were a lot of people not there who needed to be there, certainly not representative of community. And by building the projects anyway with a very narrow participation, I think we baked into the landscape, we manifested systemic racism in the landscape of some of our most visible and visited and important public spaces. Of course, we didn't do it intentionally, or we did certainly, and I say we, the global we, certainly before my time as well, but we still did it. So we don't build places that way anymore. And as I referenced a few slides ago, the conversations, the real conversations, real engagement is messy business. It's hard work. People don't agree on everything. Imagine what a boring place it would be if we all agreed on everything. But it's that work together of working through ideas, and place just offers this really powerful touchstone to have those conversations, because you can see the progress of your work. You can touch it and feel it and hang out in it and point to it and watch it evolve over time, or have a hand in it evolving over time. But we've now recognized that not only is that engagement and doing it right, and figuring out who's not there, and being deliberate about meeting them where they are and building trust, and inviting them in. That work is not only necessary to do the work and to do it well, but it is the work. It is the point. It doesn't matter as much what you build. I mean, there's lots of good physical results that can be achieved. It's the fact that community is strengthened by it and through it, and the product, whatever it looks like, is a place where everybody can see themselves and can feel proud and can engage and can contribute. And I think that those are some of the building blocks, again, not only of a magnetic place that achieves the economic objectives of attracting people, but also the social and environmental imperatives, because it causes us to build resilience as a community. It makes us stronger. It brings different perspectives to very difficult problems that we're trying to solve. And we're pretty convinced it is therefore a very important tool in our toolbox, economically, socially, and environmentally. And an example of this shift, this is a picture from Orange Shirt, I think it was Orange Shirt Day. Anyway, my colleague, Pam Glow-DeRoche, a very important community leader. She leads the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center. And if you don't know that organization, they deliver, I think, more than 50 programs in community, not just in the urban Indigenous community, but the community writ large. Pam and her team walk toward the most challenging of issues in our community, anyway, have an extraordinary impact on Halifax and beyond. And we were talking about the Halifax waterfront, and and how to better evidence First People, and how to create places for the Indigenous community, the Mi'kmaq community, to engage. And I remember our first walk, and she was very clear that this is not a place where her community goes. And as we looked around, we realized that there was almost no evidence of Mi'kmaq culture on the Halifax waterfront. And so now we're working to change that. And this day was a very emotional day for all sorts of important reasons. And I think the beginning of a much different program on the waterfront. And Pam is working, and Pam and her community, and not just Pam, but other organizations, Indigenous-led organizations, are working with us to ensure that the Halifax waterfront is a place where the Mi'kmaq story is told appropriately. So that is one example. This example is also very striking to me. This is artist Margot Durling, and this art installation by the Commons is called Chosen Family. It was also part of a visiting installation at the National Arts Center, a huge recognition of their work. But I was very struck in one of the interviews they gave when this was installed, when they said, and I quote, "Seeing yourself reflected in the built environment is a deep source of validation and belonging." And I hope this art does that for people that are walking by. And again, I think we can't underestimate the power of the built environment, of the places we create to shape our lives, and again, to include when done well, and to have the opposite effect, which we know has profound follow-on effects when done badly. When we were going to build a playground, we called the experts. These are the people who are responsible for the playground on the Halifax waterfront that we call the submarine. And this is, I think, opening day, if I'm not mistaken, and you can see some little planners there checking our work to make sure we got it right. It even made The Simpsons. It was built by local boat builder turned boatworks, and designed with the help of many kids, the inspiration of many kids, by Outside Planning and Design, a Halifax planning and design firm. Third point I would like to make is, where might this all be going? You know, and just to reiterate, so we used to build places as ends in themselves. Now we think of them as tools, and we ask them, and we challenge them, and we challenge each other to make them work harder, and to work harder ourselves to have greater impact. And you know, particularly as we're coming out of this pandemic, I think we are we're making lots of investments to restart economy, because we've had a change in point of view owing to this sort of global shutdown. And I think it's really important that we are, you know, and also I would say, because we have been forced to not participate in social life the way we did before, many of us still seeking that reprieve and, you know, recreation, started to look at social infrastructure differently. So for example, sidewalks or even parking spaces became expanded restaurant spaces so that we could socially distance and still support these important businesses. But it, and I think about this stuff a lot, but even for people who may not, I've got to think that it started to cause people to scratch their heads a bit and say, why are we dedicating so much space for cars? Again, recognizing that the built environment shapes the way we interact. And the last 50 or 75 years, it's not hard to see that the places we were building, or the infrastructure we were building, was very focused on cars. I think that's starting to change. I think people are now recognizing the importance of social infrastructure, that is building places for people in shaping lives and improving our health and well-being. So I know some of you are tourism students. I don't want to scare you with this. This is from Signe Youngerstad and team when she was part of the destination marketing organization Wonderful Copenhagen. Signe spoke at our annual board planning session this past fall, and she's lovely. If you've never heard her speak, she's just a force, and really not about the end of tourism, although there's lots of questions about how tourism recovers and what it looks like on the other side, but rather this idea that tourists aren't some sort of alien group that we, you know, for a few months of year sacrifice our quality of life so they can come here and extract all that is good and leave again, but we do it in service of economy. What she has said by declaring sort of localhood for everyone is that destinations need to think of visitors not as this sort of alien group who comes and takes things away, but as temporary residents instead of tourists who bring something and can have a positive impact on community. And as we're designing places, we should design for locals. It's what the visitors want anyway. They want to do what the locals do and experience what is authentic of a place. But that in thinking about the tourism economy that way, we can both drive our tourism economy and also improve quality of life and well-being for the folks who are here. So I'm getting close to the end here. So GDP isn't enough to measure progress. It's still an important measure of economic growth, but we need to be thinking more holistically about well-being for everyone. We need to do a better job of measuring the return on investment in social infrastructure. Yeah, I'll leave that there. In terms of health, not just physical health, because it's space for recreation, but also mental health, back to removing barriers to participation, combating social isolation, supporting belonging and community, as well as economy. Again, in particular in Nova Scotia, where our quality of life and place is at the center of our value proposition and our differentiation advantage, doubling down on place and public realm and the quality of place for people directly strengthens the thing that already makes us stand out. So it seems to me it's a pretty good investment in our work to attract people, which is importantly among our greatest opportunities to develop our economy. How do we get more people here, recognizing that there's also a lot of challenges that come with that, many of which we're feeling acutely right now across our province. And the other advantage that we have as a small, fairly compact province, and we bring a provincial lens, being a provincial crown, is this idea of collective impact. Can work, side by side. It's easy to find each other. We know each other. How do we work collectively in a distributed, not top down, but community-led, with a focus on what is intensely local and special and unique about individual communities and jurisdictions in the province, and with a focus on people. I think this builds to our strengths, and it does it in a way where everybody's involved, and therefore, and again, not everybody agrees, and that's okay. That's not a realistic goal, but by working through differences with a collective commitment to delivering on something for everybody, I think it gets us into a very promising future for Nova Scotia. So I tried to make the beginnings of the case for place, and as you start or continue your professional work, and as people in community, you contribute to place in very important ways. You're all placemakers. And I challenge you to think, what do we need to do differently when we reimagine and rebuild after the pandemic? How we recover, the choices we make, how we direct investment, all of those things have a profound effect on who we are, on who we attract, and who gets to participate, the way we interact with each other, our individual and our community health and well-being, and that of the planet. And we need to continue to challenge ourselves and our projects to work harder. And we need to challenge each other to work together to create inclusive and regenerative places for everyone. And I think, and I believe to the tips of my toes, that we can get it right, and that we must. And I'm going to leave you, and then I think we may have a few minutes for questions, but with our our corporate video. Hope you can hear it. So thank you very much. I think I'm happy to take questions.
Jennifer, thank you so much for the presentation. The video made me smile. It is just this heartwarming feeling when I know that when I moved to Nova Scotia a couple of years ago and seeing the change, the development, even in Halifax or in the province itself, it is just so great to see that this place is evolving, that you and all of us are creating a place where people love to come. And as a tourism student, I just love seeing development in tourism, such as on Peggy's Cove or within Halifax. I've noticed when I moved here and you talked about so many parking lots on the waterfront, and it's just so great to see there are things happening. We are building this city and province for people, not for other things. My question now is, I can think of one spot in Halifax that have been mostly excluded and it still doesn't feel very inclusive, but I know something is in works. I'm talking about Africville. Are you able to tell us more about the project or where it's headed, or?
We're not involved in the Africville project. There is a project that's emerging. I can tell you though, we have been involved in work with the Africville Heritage Society around their vision as part of that project for a new marina facility. So you may be aware there are Portland's waterside of that project, and a long tradition of accessing the harbor in the community of Africville, which they would like to regenerate through infrastructure. So we're kind of on the periphery of it, but I do think there's something very important beginning to happen there in terms of support for community-led, revitalization of that really important place.
Thank you so much. I'm just curious if there are any other questions. I posted the email address where you could send your responses or questions. Maria, have you received any questions?
Yes, I have. I did send them to you, but I can ask them if you want me to. So basically, we have a couple of questions, Jen, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So the first one we have is, can you disclose what your next big projects are?
Sure. In 2018, we became Develop Nova Scotia. We were previously waterfront development and primarily focused in Halifax and Lunenburg. Our mandate today is province-wide. We have a number of projects underway. One that may seem a little bit different is the Internet for Nova Scotia initiative. So our job is to deliver internet infrastructure across high-speed internet infrastructure across the province, which is enabling infrastructure for business and tourism, and a number of other important services and to enable people to participate in social life. So that's a very large project, about a $300 or so million project underway. And people often say, how does that relate to placemaking? And as I mentioned in that wheel earlier in the presentation, the Project for Public Spaces wheel about what makes a place great. Accessibility and connectivity is foundational infrastructure for great places. So it's linked, and we do have a lot of construction expertise. But we're also involved in a really cool project in Pictou on the waterfront. We're involved, and I'm thinking about ones that are specifically linked to sort of the tourism space, recognizing the audience. We're involved in a project in Lewisburg on the waterfront. There's an interesting multi-day trail project in Northern Cape Breton called the Seawall Trail Project that we're working with behind community on. We've been working to build supporting infrastructure for multi-day marine visitation around the province. Last year, we invested significantly in the Bedeque waterfront and invested in Mahone Bay with new floating docks, and we've got significant infrastructure investment in Lunenburg and Halifax, and we're now looking around the province to see where those gaps are. We have a call in market right now for new tourism businesses on the Halifax waterfront, tourism and hospitality type, retail type opportunities, and one in market in Lunenburg for the very important Zwicker property. So there's a lot of projects, and I know I've forgotten some, but those are kind of some of the big Inverness. If you're a golfer or no one, you or they have likely talked about Cabot. We're working with the community to help them thoughtfully benefit from the economic investment that's happening in that region in a way that benefits residents and contributes to a great quality of life for locals, as well as additional tourism experiences for visitors. And so that project has been underway. Again, we're working behind community on that, shape-shifting our team to fill gaps where they may exist and give advice where it can be helpful. But a few things on the go.
Wow, that's an exhausting list, and that's just tourism. So thank you for that. We have another question. You talked earlier about, obviously, a new approach to trying to involve users in the process. So can you give us some idea of how you approach engaging the different user groups so they have a voice at the table?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's not a perfect answer, and it's evolving over time. But this year, over the past probably year and a half, related to a really important mixed use project going on the South Waterfront in Halifax, the Kennard development project. We began very deliberately reaching out to different marginalized groups and communities and inviting conversations. And these are like one-on-one conversations and 5 or 10 people group conversations in community, in many cases with compensation, which we think is really important because a lot of people are being asked over and over and over again to weigh in on things. And those conversations have been extraordinary in opening our eyes. So we're trying all sorts of different marketing engagement tools, different media channels. We're doing surveys. We're doing like in Peggy's Cove, for example, we set up the architect and designers and our team on site and sort of lived in community for a week and had drop-ins for locals to sit down and chat. But it's through these really deep conversations that entirely new ideas and perspectives have been illuminated. And I'll give you one because I think it was stunning to me. And it was, we have a public washroom in Bishop's Landing. It's been there a long time. It opens on the boardwalk. It clearly marked public washroom. And one of the pieces of feedback we heard was, I can't afford to live in that building. I would never think to go to the washroom in that public washroom. It's not a place for me. And we couldn't believe it. So like it's putting, and that's one example. There's been all sorts of revelations that have come through this, and it's really sort of jarred our team to say, what else have we, missed? And not only is public engagement the way to do it, but we need to build much more diverse teams at all levels, including our board level. And so we're working hard to do that as well.
Thank you. Great answer. So we're looking, obviously, what would aspiring students who would like to work with Develop Nova Scotia, how do they get involved? Is there anything available at the youth level or the student level to be the next generation of playmakers, right?
Yeah, so there's a few things. The first is we hire a lot of students in the summer. And I'm not sure when those postings are going up, but we can share that and you can distribute that among your student body. We would love that. And there are all sorts of different types of positions, generally on the front line. So supporting events, supporting the visitor experience. We have marina folks, marketing and communications support. So administering surveys and just generally talking to people in intel, supporting public engagement. We also have opportunities for young people to participate in our engagement program. And so we'll also share information on that. And we are an evolving organization, so we do regular hiring as well. And so please keep an eye on our website. We hire at all levels, and we have a young team, and we love to. We have a mixed team, but we have lots of young people on our team too, and we love to hire, young creative people with lots of energy and big ideas. So there's a few ways, and I would offer that. This, I know we're out of time. We're running out of time, but if there are follow-up questions or folks want to learn more about our organization, reach out and we'll make someone available to sit down and have a conversation. We love to do that. We love to talk about our work and we love to engage people in it.
Thank you so much, Jen, for that. Over to you, Peter, now to close the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, for sharing and creating this inclusive space, even though it was for an hour. I believe we have learned a lot, and I can speak on my behalf. I have learned a lot. I just want to, again, thank you for taking your time, for being here with us, and for sharing your insights on what you do and how you do it. And I'm sure that we will be soon able to enjoy all the spaces in Halifax or outside of Halifax. So thank you, everyone, for joining the session. Just a reminder, there's another third and last session of today starting at 1:30, and it's about networking in a virtual world with Natalie Frederick Wilson. So there is enough time for you to grab a quick lunch and snacks and drink some water and join us again at 1:30. And thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.